In 1974, the Nigerian government followed the recommendations of the Udoji Commission and increased workers' wage, but public sector workers were main beneficiaries. It was not until 3rd of September 1981 that the first minimum wage law was introduced. The law covered all full-time workers, except seasonal workers and those who worked in enterprises employing fewer than 50 workers. Its introduction was prompted by a number of factors. The Nigerian Labour Congress, an umbrella organization of the trade union, then led by Mr. Hassan Sunmonu, was vociferous in its demand for improvement in workers' welfare. It threatened to go on strike if its demand were not met, that's for the minimum wage. As a new government at that time, the last thing the president, that time Shehu Shagari administration wanted was a nationwide strike. The minimum wage in Nigeria has been revised a number of times, but has kept pace. Many will say have not kept pace with the cost of living. It became 250 naira in 1991, 5,500 naira in 2000, 18,900 in 2011, 30,000 naira, at the moment 70,000 naira. Some states are paying as much as 85,000 naira, but at the moment. But let's discuss this and, of course, labor relations with government at this very time. And I'm talking to Comrade Peter Esele. He's the former president of the Trade Union Congress, also former president of Pengasan. It's good to have you join the program. Thank you so much, Comrade. It's good to see you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, and compliments of the season.
Yes, I wish you the same. I think I need to start from general labor issues, and many will say what's been happening around the labor movement. What is your assessment of this relationship between labor and government, considering all that we've seen in 2024 before we finally arrived at the minimum wage settlement of 70,000, where some states are paying more? What do you think about that relationship and the negotiation style between both parties?
I think majorly what you look at is there is always tendency to be difficulty in negotiation between government and labor. But again, labor is in a very, very precarious position in 2024. 2024 is not being a very easy year for Nigerian workers and also for the leadership of organized labor. So they just have to find the middle of the road approach so as not to cripple the economy. I would liken it to not wanting to bring down the roof on everyone. So they just have to find a way to navigate a very, very difficult economic climate. And also, I just listened to Muda Yusuf so that companies also don't pack up, because workers and companies' relationship is symbiotic. They need each other to survive. So if there are no companies, there are no workers. And if you have no workers, there are no union members. So walking that middle road is what organized labor had tried to do this year. And it was a very tough one. And I would rather see the glass as half full rather than half empty.
Well, many would tell you that, can the present minimum wage really take workers home? And many would say, can it address the other issues? You know where I'm headed. What do you think about that, talking about the present minimum wage?
No, I don't think the present minimum wage can actually address all the issues. But what I expect the government to do is to look for a way of mitigating whatever challenges that may arise as a result of the minimum wage. And as two things happen in 2024. You have removal of subsidy, which also is led to inflation skyrocketing, and you also have the Naira float. So when you have both, what I would have expected is Naira float, yes, which invariably means that government gets more money in Naira in terms of Naira. And what I expected is you have what I'll call an omnibus plan between the federal government, state, and local government, and then help the workers to take up some of those heavy lifting. One of the heavy lifting is cost of transportation, healthcare, education. So if you're able to take care of cost of transportation, is subsidized heavily, and then you now look at the healthcare, they know they can source healthcare easily and it's cheaper. And then the cost of educating their children is also cheaper. You're going to find out that the 70K at the end of the day may go a long way towards helping. But if the worker needs to be responsible for housing, needs to be responsible for education of their kids, need to be paid such an exorbitant fare as cost of transportation. And in all of this, you are saying there should be no corruption. You have just created an avenue for people to do whatever they have to do to survive.
Comrade Esele, you are an active player in the oil and gas industry, and you know what's happening before now, when we used to have those regular turnaround maintenance. As of today, we are informed, we know the Port Harcourt refinery is back on stream. Warri Refinery also just a few minutes ago, my colleague just spoke to me from there live. The machines and the engines are working again. Now, what would you say compared to what used to be now looking at the oil and gas industry, particularly focus on refining, local refining?
I think what has happened over the years is that there's been too much of political involvement. I think since the current administration, I would say since last year, there's been more aligned professionals to do what they have to do. And if you find out the way they've been executing this turnaround maintenance, it also differs from what you have in the past. What you have now is NNPC went out of the country and borrowed money to carry out those turnaround maintenance. And whoever gave the loan to NNPC to effect those changes only releases funds in accordance with various milestones, which has to do with the execution of the various projects. And I know that a lot of Nigerians were skeptical and they were saying, oh, it's not working, nothing is happening there. But at the moment, from what I gathered, it's working. But just the most attention of Nigerians is that not until they start running out PMS, they don't consider that the refinery is working. But refineries come up in stages. Now, the stage that they are in, I think probably by first quarter next year or early next year, they are going to have PMS coming out. But you have diesels and other associated products that are coming out of the refinery.
So do you think that others will come on board? Because the government is saying all the local refineries must come on board. So is it the political will? Is it that something has changed?
Yes, it's a combination of political will coming from the president wanting professionals to deliver on what he wants them to do. And then the other aspect again is that the GMD of NNPC, who has also, who I would say is also a professional, who has been doing his best to also make sure that he lives up to the expectation and lives up to his promises. You know, Mr. Kyari is always giving himself deadlines. Sometimes he doesn't meet those deadlines, but behind what he has in himself is that he's bound to ensure that he meets those deadlines. So you have a combination of political will and professional competence, which is playing out right now, and less interference of politicians in what is happening in NNPC, including the chairman of the board. The chairman of the board is also an alumna of ExxonMobil.
Back to labor issues. Many will tell you that there is need for an harmonious industrial relations between the labor unions and governments. Moving on in 2025, and with the agreement that minimum wage will be reviewed, I think it's periodically now. What do you make of that relationship between the labor union and government? Do you see that handshake moving forward?
Yes. I think the way the labor movement and the federal government, especially the federal government, has been going has been very, very cordial. And that's the way to go. You know, most times people always feel that labor movement, you have to be antagonistic towards the federal government, then that is when you are considered to be working. But the most important thing is that what are you bringing into the workers? So you can achieve so much more by negotiating. The relationship between the federal government and the labor unions at the federal level, which is the president of NSC and the president of TUC, I think is very cordial. It's something that they should work on and they should continue to build on. But the challenges has to do with the state governors, because most of the state governors have no respect for agreements. You just said some are paying higher than 70,000, but out of 36 states, you find out that less than 30% is actually paying the 70,000. And so what happens to the remaining 70%? So what you have, majority of our challenges or the organized labor is facing actually is in the states, because most states will not want to pay. Most states don't provide transport. Most states don't provide healthcare. And most states are not standing up to their responsibility in finding a way to mitigate whatever challenges that the Nigerian worker or the average worker is facing. And that's the challenge for 2025.
Well, that seems to be, but let's look at the impact now again of the labor movement itself. Some will say some issues where they expect the labor unions to react. They really do not react at times. And some other issues come up and they react. For example, when there's an increase in price of fuel, some will say there was a time there was cash scarcity and no one heard anything from the labor movement. But when there's a bit of increase in maybe price of PMS, price of electricity, then the labor movement comes out. So what sort of issues, in your thoughts, you've been the leader of the TUC and of course Spengerson, what sort of issues do you expect the labor to, come in to talk to government or to, show their views to let governments know their position on moving forward in 2025? Because a lot of issues considering the economic reforms that we face.
There are no issues in 2024 that organized labor, even in 2023 that organized labor did not talk about. When you had this cash scarcity, I remember it was when organized labor gave ultimatum that things changed. So what people are saying is the expectation of people and the reality are what is divergent. Because first thing is that as president of NSC or president of TUC, they are also privy to certain information. Organized labor is considering to be doing something when they are banging table or shutting the country down. No, that is what we call the nuclear option. It's something that you do at the very, very when every other thing fails. But even if you have 5% chance talking, you have to take advantage of it. So organized labor is always talking. But the fact is that some individuals feel that it's only when you become cantankerous or when you stop the planes from flying or when you shut down the country, that is when it looks as if organized labor is actually talking. I can authoritatively tell you, if you look at press releases from organized labor, they always talk about it. The role of organized labor is not to bring the country down. The role of organized labor is not to create a crisis that will lead to a fall in any government. No. The role of organized labor is to criticize and also see the best way out for Nigerians in general. And that is the role. They must also come and not just criticize, also find an alternative opinion and also suggest a better way for government to work.
Must we also always get to giving ultimatums and going on strikes before we get issues resolved?
No, it's the challenge of the environment. Most times you have to issue a threat of strike. Most times you have to give an ultimatum because agreements are not met. But we don't need to shut down. We don't need to go on strike. But at the end of the day, you also find out that most times the ultimatum works. Before you go on strike, governments find one or two reasons why you shouldn't go on strike. So strike is not something that I think any president of organized labor is happy to go into because at the end of the day, strikes is always a lose-lose situation. It doesn't. I have been in it and I know that. So if you have to look at production, you have to look at what is happening to your workers. Somebody is going to pay a price for it. Somebody is going to lose his life as a result of that strike. So a lot of these things are factoring, and that's why most times you see both NSC and TUC try to also avoid the strike option. It is majorly, that is when everything else fails. It's what we call the nuclear option. Just like shutting production. I don't think any Bengasin president wants to go ahead and shut production when you even have 2% chance of getting a result. So imagine shutting the production of over 1 million barrels a day. The impact on the financial well-being of the country is huge. So it's not something that you trifle with.
So touching on that, but let's end up on that, on improving production, which Pengassan plays a very important role. Many will say, you see government is really trying to step up production and all of that. Are you seeing any threats in any way, talking about vandalism and all that has been happening? Do you see this government addressing this? NNPC are led by Mele Kyari and of course the military trying to address this. What would be your comments around that too?
Yes, I think they're addressing it because how will you know they're addressing it is that even if you're having an extra 100,000 barrels here and there coming up in our production, though we've not yet met our OPEC quota, but if you look at what the production in the last 1 year, you'll find out that we have made progress. So gradually we are getting there. I'm still very optimistic that 2025 probably production quota will get better. This is December. This is the first time in a long while we didn't have any petrol scarcity in December. And then we're having the price of petroleum product also coming down a bit. That is competition, what competition can do in the system. So for me, in 2025, I am optimistic that sector, before I forget, you also know that Shell is investing billions of dollars in its Bonga oil field going forward in 2025. So everything looks okay for 2025. And there is a lot of progress, a lot of movement in the oil and gas. And don't forget, that's the life wire of this economy.
So seems like the confidence is coming back.
Yes, confidence is coming back into that sector. People investment is also coming in. So it's all looking good. If I'm to look at the energy sector, I will say yes, we are making progress in the energy sector. The other aspect of it is that the private sector is also doing better than the public sector, in the sense that there are very few people in the private sector that pays that 70,000. A lot of people have gone beyond that. So private sector is making more progress than public sector. But just like I told you before, I would say I'm fairly optimistic about where the country is going, and I'm hoping that 2025 will be good for every one of us, and we can smile. And I'm also happy that we are all alive, and 2024 has been a very tough and difficult year. So hopefully 2025 will be better for everyone.
Interesting chat with you as usual, Mr. Comrade Peter Esele, as the former president of the Trade Union Congress, also former president of Pengasens. Thank you so very much. I do enjoy the rest of your day. I wish you a happy 2025.
Thank you for having me.